Glad you're here this morning. We're on our second full Sunday of Great and Holy Lent, and today we remember St. Gregory Palamas. You saw his icon as you came in. And you might wonder, why are we celebrating St. Gregory Palamas of all saints? Why does he get picked to be the saint for this day? And that is because of his incredible teaching that he did in the 1300s when he was alive. And he was part of what in the Orthodox Church we would call the Ninth Ecumenical Council. And at this council, he declared really important things about God and his nature. Because at this time, of course, we have had a number of ecumenical councils before Gregory. We have the first 7, and we celebrated actually last week the 7th ecumenical council, right? The council where we affirm iconography, which ultimately affirms the incarnation of Christ, that he became truly God and truly man. And then we had what was called the 8th ecumenical council, which happened in 879. And in that council, we clearly declared that we will not use what's called the Philoque in the Creed, which is essentially a move to try to get the Godhead split up and divided. And so we spoke out against that and made a clear council statement that we do not affirm that. And then also in that council, they affirmed all the other things that were trying to destroy the Holy Church. And that was the papacy, trying to establish one man that can rule over all other men. And we know in Orthodoxy that this is not true and not possible, because we don't put our trust in princes or sons of men. We only put our trust in the one true King, God, prophet, and priest, and that is Jesus Christ. And so this council that Gregory Palamas was speaking at, of course, happened in 879. And then the next council was not until this time in the 1300s. And each council, by the way, just so you know this, there were a number of them, and each council confirmed the council before it. So whatever happened in the council before, that council was called also to confirm again everything that was called in the council before. So obviously when St. Gregory's council happened in the 1300s, they affirmed the council that happened in the 800s, affirming those two things, that the Philoque will not be put into the Creed, and that the papacy is not to be the ruling part of the world, right, and of all the church. Instead, of course, the church rules, and local councils and local bishops rule local churches, and that's how the church functions. So this council that Gregory was a part of was again speaking more details about the heresies that the Western Church was trying to promote. And I just want to share one of those today because I think it's an important one. I'll share a little bit about what he taught and the differences. But then we'll read a little bit from this little book that I have by Archimandrite George on Catholicism in the light of Orthodoxy. And he talks in here about, I'm going to read just one little short section about what created grace is versus uncreated grace, right? Now we know that in the church, we have always believed that God is uncreated, right? He wasn't made by somebody else, right? And this is sort of the world's viewpoint, though, of gods in general, is that they are created somehow. Who creates them? No one really says. And who's creating the gods? Isn't that someone we should look to? And so this is the confusion of the world. You know, they think in terms of only material things, right? Creation, the things of the earth, the things of the world, right? But we as Orthodox Christians, we rise up above that. And you heard this even in our tropars for St. Gregory, how he teaches us that we rise above the world. We are, in our faith, living above and outside of the world. We're not bound by the material nature of the world, right? But in the West, they could not have this concept. And that's because they were already pulled away from the church. In 1054, they left the Orthodox Church, and they were kind of out on their own. And so the teachings that they had became focused on this world, on this earth, on the things of this world, right? And so created things of God are the way in which the West believes that we get our grace from God. That our grace comes through created things around us, right? But the church has always taught, mainly through Jesus' ascension up to the mountain, where on that mountain, Jesus taught the 3 disciples the power of his light. That his light was not something that was created. And even the apostles witness to this. They say that this light was nothing that man could understand. This is why they had to close their eyes and close their ears and fall away the way they did, because they could not take in this light. This light was not created light, brothers and sisters. This light was the uncreated light of God. And this is what Gregory is defending. Because as soon as you make everything material, right? When you say that God's grace can be just turned on like a faucet, right? And poured out, which is what Barlam, this opposing Gregory, was saying, it distorts the entire faith. Because our faith comes from an uncreated God. A God who then imparts his uncreated light to us. His uncreated mysteries come down to us. They are not something that's fashioned or created by us or by the world, but they are of a matter that we cannot understand, right? They're beyond our understanding. And in this little quote, I'll read this little quote from you from this Athonite monk. And he says, in this case, a divine grace is created. It cannot divinize man. The purpose of the life of Christ, if divine grace is created, cannot be theosis, but an ethical improvement. And this is kind of what the West says, that we need ethical improvement, and that's how we gain perfection, is that we just be ethically good. But St. Gregory teaches, and as St. George, or the Archimandrite George teaches here as well, the same kind of thing, right? So that we ought to become better men, not however God's by grace. This is what the West is teaching, to become a better person, but not to become gods by grace, which is what the Orthodox Church calls us to. As a result, the church cannot be a communion of theosis, but a foundation according to men, justification in a nominalist and legal manner by means of this created grace. In the final analysis, the very truth of the church as real theanthropic communion is completely abolished. We don't have this union or connection with Christ if we do not have uncreated grace. In this case, the mysteries of Christ are not signs of the presence of God in the church and of the communion with the uncreated grace of God, but in some way they are like faucets, as I described, right? In which the church opens and flows out created grace with which men wait to benefit to be legally justified. And this is also the West's understanding of salvation is not an organic thing that we experience in the life of Christ with a relationship with him, but instead it is interpreted as something legal, something that you are stamped with, right? That is more like a court situation than a life situation. The asceticism also lapses into what he calls ethical gymnastics, and the struggling Christian cannot receive experience of the uncreated grace. He does not behold the uncreated light of Tabor, and so, according to the divine Polemos, he remains inconsolable and untouched by divine light. He does not participate in the glory, the brightness, and the kingdom of the Trinitarian God. Thus, theology without the experience of the uncreated light becomes scholastic and discursive. Man remains closed off in the dark prison of this present world without an opening or a foretaste of the coming kingdom. Our Orthodox Church, with great synods of the 14th century, approved the teachings of the distinction between the essence and the energy of God, and concerning his uncreated energies and the uncreated light, and established this as her theology. It declared St. Gregory Palamas as a fixed teacher and a luminary of the church, and anathematized those who did not accept his teaching. The papists, until this day, have not accepted his teaching, and a great many fight against St. Gregory Palamas. And so he taught about the essence and the energies of God, right? The Western church does not have this distinction. They do not understand this, right? We see God as, in his essence, as something that is unknowable. We can't know his essence. His essence is beyond our comprehension. It's beyond our capabilities, because we are finite beings and he is an infinite being, right? So we can't fully know him in his essence. But I would argue, can any of us know anybody in our real essence? I mean, even husbands and wives, do we really, really know each other? You know, even there's a little bit of a separation. So in our very essence as persons, we can't really know each other. But the West is trying to say we can know the essence of God. Well, God is unknowable. He's incomprehensible. He's indescribable, as we say in the liturgy. So how can we know him in that way? And Gregory here points out that's not how we know God. We know God through the energies that he gives to us. And he gives the symbol and the imagery of the sun, right? So we have the sun, although we can't see it today because it's covered up. But the sun, and we're going to have this eclipse thing that's happening, right? So the sun itself represents God for Gregory. And he says that in the sun, can anybody go into the sun and know the essence of the sun? And the answer is obviously no. The sun, we would be burned out, right? It's too powerful. But we can certainly know and experience the energies of the sun, right? So we feel its heat, we feel its rays, we feel and see its light, right? These are the ways in which we experience the sun. And when we say that, we say the sun is shining, right? Well, we're really not talking about the sun, or we say we feel the sun. We don't really feel the sun or see the sun. We're seeing its results, right? Its energies, right? And this is how God ministers to us, brothers and sisters. He comes to us by way of his energies. Now, his energies, we can still fully know him, just as we can fully know the sun by knowing its heat and its rays. The results of it are what God allows us to know about him. And this is the extent to which Gregory would teach. So he's not teaching that we know the essence of God, but that we know his actual energies. St. Gregory, I have an excellent little quote from here, and I'll close with this today, because I think this is important for us to know in the way we think about our own salvation, the way we think about our own relationship with God. And, one little quote from Gregory is a really good one that we sing in the pre-sanctified liturgy, right? When the priest is standing before the altar, and he turns with the censer and with the candle, and he says, "The light of Christ illumines all." That's actually a quote from St. Gregory Palamas. The light of Christ illumines all. And he says, "The light of the Lord's transfiguration does not come into being or cease to be." This is another important point, right? Created light, right? Created light has an evidence of it, but it can cease to be. It's created, so it can end, right? It can be a light and it can not be a light. But Gregory is saying here that the Lord's transfiguration, this light, which is symbolized by the blue and the white that's around the Lord's icon there, that you see, right, called the mandala. It's an iconography tool used to express this uncreated light. He says, "Nor is it circumscribed," in other words, can you write it out or exactly show it, "or perceptible to the senses, even though for a short time on the narrow mountaintop it was seen by human eyes." But later the apostles will write and say that they really couldn't see a light like we think of lights. But it was a light that transcended normal light that we understand and know in the kind of little frame that we have. I think it was a light that went beyond that. It was an energetic light that superseded light that could be seen by the physical eyes. We can only see a certain amount of light as human beings anyway, right? You've heard this, that, we only see this little narrow band that we can actually see. But there's many, many versions of light that extend out both ways. And I think the apostles felt something. They experienced something that went beyond their eyes and went to the depths of their heart. And this is really what St. Gregory is teaching us, that our goal in this life is to seek after God. First and foremost, it's to seek to be healed. Because we all have rottenness, right? We all have things in us that aren't right, and we need that healing. We need the light. But we need light that's not created light. We don't need an earthly or a temporal fix. We need an internal fix. And this is what Gregory is speaking about. This is what he's trying to teach. That we can know God. We can know him. We can experience him. He can be a part of our living life as we walk and breathe and all the things that we do. Gregory was a big proponent of the Jesus prayer, because he felt through his monks as well that the uncreated light could come to us when we're constantly in a state of prayer. That's how God reaches us. If we're not in its constant state of prayer, which has to be even happen not always consciously, but even subconsciously, we need to be continually in prayer, that this is where this uncreated light can manifest itself to us and show us. And we're always seeking this. The fathers talk about two things. We seek theoria, which is a seeking to see God, right? Blessed are the pure in heart, and they will see God. And then we also seek theosis, right? Theosis is this oneness with God that goes again beyond comprehension. It's where God is our living life. What we do, we no longer are ourselves, but we are living his life. These are all the saints around us who have experienced this theosis, this rising up. It's us being pulled up to heaven by God and taken up into his arms. This is the call and the goal of the Christian life, to see God and to be one with God. This is the Lord's Prayer that he prays in John 17. He wishes that we would all be one. So brothers and sisters, my challenge for you is to seek these things. Seek theosis, seek the theoria of God, to see him. And we do this with a pure heart and seeking a pure heart all the time. We ask this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory to Jesus Christ. Amen.